Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be painting this little calla lily in acrylic paint on a little canvas panel. So if you would like to paint along, I've included some instructions, so just keep watching. I start off by using my reference photo to paint in a light outline of the flower or whatever my subject is going to be. I try to pick a color that's light and going to be present in the final painting, but won't be too noticeable. It'll just kind of blend in with the final painting, and I use it fairly watered down. So in this case, it's going to be a really light green. When I'm sketching it out, I also try to fill in some shadow areas where I know that we're going to have some darker values that I can see in the reference photo. I chose not to paint in all of the leaves that are present in the photo. I felt like the background was really too busy and thick with leaves, so I just went with a few of them. I really like painting my backgrounds black for some reason. I guess I like a really noticeable contrast between the subject, especially if it's a light subject, and the background. So here I'm using black acrylic paint. I start out all of my paintings by first painting in the darker values that I can see in my reference photo. In this case, I'm using a kind of a grayish bluish purple color. If you've ever painted anything white, whether it's an animal or a flower or anything at all, you notice that if you use pure white, you're not going to be able to see anything. It's just going to be a flat object, even if the background is black. So if you take your time and look at an object that's white, you can actually start to see a lot of different colors in it. By looking at my reference photo, I can see that the actual flower that your eye perceives as white is actually different shades of blue and green. I can even see some yellow in there and some grays. So that's what I'm trying to paint in the initial stages, is just the darker shadow parts of the flower. So here I'm mixing a kind of a dark green color to put in the middle of the flower. So it looks like in the center there's some green reflected light mixed with some gray, a little blue, a little yellow. This is just the first layer, so I decided to lay this in now to give the flower some dimension. So I refer to my reference photo pretty much constantly. And if you look in the center of the flower, that pretty yellow part that sticks out, I think that's called the spadix. It is actually yellow on top, towards the top of the flower. And then as you go in deeper, it's like a reddish orange color. And then when you reach the white part of the flower, it seems to be like a deep green. So just make sure you pay close attention to your reference photo. It'll tell you a lot. Here I'm mixing up the middle tones of the white part of the flower. As you can see, it's not white at all. It's a light blue. I mix with ultramarine blue. I think maybe a little purple in there and a touch of umber. It's just important that the middle tone is lighter than the darker tones, than the darker values that you put in previously. After laying in the middle tones, sometimes you lose your darker values, so I like to go in and restate them. It often takes several layers of acrylic paint in order to be happy with your final painting. So when I'm popping in the lightest tones, it's going to be not pure white. Again, occasionally I do use pure white, but I like to save that for the end. So for the lighter tones in this flower painting, I actually do a really pale yellow and just add that to the edges and anywhere I see in my reference photo that we have some really light parts. That's always my favorite part. So now it's time to mix up the dark tones for the leaves that are surrounding the flower. The cool part about painting the leaves was that it's not just green. You don't just see green in them. They're a lot of fun because they have some deep greens, of course, and blues and yellows, and of course light greens. They tend to reflect what's in their environment around them. So again, I start by painting the darkest values first, just like anything else that I paint, and then move on to the middle tones and the light tones. And after these layers dry a little bit, I go back in with with more layers and restate my lights and darks and just kind of mold the leaves into something that makes me happy. After painting in the first layers on the leaves, I like to let them dry a little bit again so I can go back and restate my different values. So I go back to working on the flower now that that's pretty much dry. And I do this with all of my acrylic paintings. I'll spend a lot of time in one area with the first layer or whatever layer I'm working on, and then I'll move on to a different area and start the first layer of that, so that it gives it some time to dry, and then I can come back in. It makes it easier this way, because if you try to paint wet on wet, especially with acrylic paint, you end up just making a mess and ruining the canvas. Adding some more layers here to the center of the flower, it helps to cover up the canvas underneath, because acrylic paints are fairly transparent, especially when you use water to make them flow better. So it's inevitable that you're going to have to use multiple layers in order to be happy with the results. Here I am again, just restating my middle and dark tones and just reworking the painting until you start to get the three-dimensional look that you're aiming for. It really takes some time in order to get a painting to start to look like something. It's really easy to get discouraged in the first few layers, because my paintings, especially just one or two layers of paint in, look like crap. And I really want to throw them out pretty much every time I paint. So stick with it. Keep adding your layers. Keep using your reference photo. And keep practicing. And eventually, as you build it up, it's going to start to look like something. As long as you start to paint what you see and not what you think you see, then your painting will start to make sense to your eyes. This is one of my favorite parts of any painting, is adding in the highlights. So to make this leaf look turned up, I mix a really light green color to paint on the very edge where the light is reflecting. And underneath the leaf, you can see it's really kind of dark. And that helps to give it that upturned look. Using this soft flat brush helps to give the leaf the look of veins. I love using this brush when I'm painting florals. Just touching up the edges and refining some of the colors in the leaves just to make it look a little bit more realistic. Trying to add in the veins. Just doing some final touch-ups here just to make it look a little bit more polished. Now it's time to sign your painting. Use a watered down color that is present in your painting but isn't going to take the attention away from your subject, and use a little skinny round brush. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if there's something else you want me to paint.